Okay, let's go ahead and get started here. I think this is our 6th week in our Wisdom 5 in Job, something like that, maybe, I don't know. But we're running down the end of Job. So today we're going to look at Job's final speech. As I was joking earlier, this will not be our final speech on Job, but it'll be close to that. So next week we're going to look at Elihu's chapters, and the final week we'll look at God showing up and kind of closing out the story of Job. So we're doing things a little bit different today in that rather than hitting one representative chapter, we're going to do a bit more of a bird's eye view on all 4 chapters of Job's final speech. And the reason for that is there are some things that we really need to hit in each of the chapters. None of the chapters is really representative, if that makes sense. So just looking at that outline I gave you, we've got in chapter 28, this discourse Job does on wisdom itself, and we are going to camp out there because I think that's a really good thing. In Job 29, he's lamenting the loss of his past, and we're going to mostly focus on the first few verses of that. And then chapter 30, he's contrasting his past honor with the way that he, in his mind anyway, is being taunted by his friends. We are not going to spend much time there. That's just kind of a rehash of what we've already gotten with Job. And then we are going to look at chapter 31, that final appeal, at least a bit. So let's hit 28. We'll start with verses 1 through 11. Surely there is a mine for silver and a place where gold is refined. Iron is taken from the earth, and copper is smelted from ore. Man puts an end to darkness and searches every recess for ore in the darkness and in the shadow of death. He breaks open a shaft away from people in places forgotten by feet. They hang far away from men, they swing to and fro. As for the earth, from it comes bread, but underneath it is turned up as by fire. Its stones are the sources of sapphires, and it contains gold dust. That path no bird knows, nor has the falcon's eye seen it. The proud lions have not trodden it, nor has the fierce lion passed over it. He puts his hand on the flint. He overturns the mountains at the roots. He cuts out the channels in the rocks, and his eye sees every precious thing. He dams up the streams from trickling. What is hidden he brings forth to light. So there's this real poetic language speaking about how man can discover great treasures. This is something that man will do. It's out of the eyes of the falcons. The falcons can't see it. The birds can't see it. Even the mighty lion can't do anything about it. But man is even going to go so far as to turn over the mountain as man is searching out treasures. Verse 12. But where can wisdom be found? And where is the place of understanding? Man does not know its value, nor is it found in the land of the living. The deep says, it is not in me, and the sea, it is not with me. It cannot be purchased for gold, nor can silver be weighed for its price. It cannot be valued in the gold of Ophir, in the precious onyx or sapphire. Neither gold nor crystal can equal it, nor can it be exchanged for jewelry of fine gold. No mention shall be made of coral or quartz, for the price of wisdom is above rubies. The topaz of Ethiopia cannot equal it, nor can it be valued in pure gold. So man can seek out all these great treasures, but what about wisdom? You're not going to find wisdom by digging in the dark places. Not even in the sea are you going to find it where man can't go. So there's this big picture poetic contrast between the riches that man can find and this wisdom that man cannot find. Verse 20. From where then does wisdom come, and where is the place of understanding? It's hidden from the eyes of all living and concealed from the birds of the air. Destruction and death say, we've heard a report about it with our ears. God understands the way, and he knows its place. For he looks to the ends of the earth and sees under the whole heavens to establish a weight for the wind and apportion the waters by measure. When he made a law for rain and path for the thunderbolt, then he saw wisdom and declared it. He prepared it, indeed, he searched it out. And to man he said, behold, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom, and to depart from evil is understanding. So man can discover great treasures, but not wisdom, but God knows where to find wisdom. And in fact, God's the one who gives wisdom. So here's the big question here. Chapter 28. In what ways is this a bit of a commentary on the last 23 chapters of the book? A commentary on all that long round of discussion between Job and his friends. And especially considering we're looking at the wisdom literature in general, here's a chapter that just kind of jumped right into wisdom itself. What do y'all think?
Father, my morning devotional reading has been in Ecclesiastes. Deals with wisdom.
Yeah.
A bit, right?
Just a bit.
And so one of the things that's a recurring theme throughout there is how the wise are very slow to speak. And, we talk about the traditional Shiva that Job's friends held, but perhaps we put too much of our own therapeutic lens on that as to why they were being quiet. And then we see that they're very quick to speak about lots of things and dispense what they consider to be wisdom.
Yeah.
But over and over and over again, it refers to the wise man as the one that really doesn't enter into the fray, doesn't get involved in these arguments, but listens and waits on the Lord. And so to some degree, I think that there is that commentary, if you will, on how much focus there is on possessions, how much focus there is on the things that moth and rust destroy as an outward sign of our success, whether you're in or out. And then how quickly they are to come to that.
Yeah, so just to sum up for the recording, the other wisdom literature tells us the wise men is slow to speak. These guys were not. We're told from other parts in the Bible the possessions are not what it's all about, but for these guys, that was the sign of everything. And they're jumping to conclusions. So they're digging around, but they're not really finding wisdom. Anybody else? Julius?
Yeah, well, it seems that in all of the back and forth between Job and his friends, they're certain that they haven't figured out. This is how life is. This is how God is, and we can tell just by the circumstances. We can assume that you've done something wrong. There's really no other explanation. We know how everything works. This is how it works.
Yeah.
And Job, because it's happening to him, he knows that that's not the case. And so this is kind of like, well, how can, if what he thought, because Job probably believed just like his friends did until that was challenged directly in his own life. And so now the question is, okay, what we've assumed, what we thought we knew, we don't really know. How do we know anything? Where is the source of this? How do we get our understanding? We can't mine for it like gold. It's not in a vein like silver. Where is it?
Yeah, so I got to get my other microphone fixed. I have two, that's why you pass it around, but my other one, the button came off, so I can't turn it on. But to sum up for the recording, they're very certain, his friends are. They think they know exactly what's wrong. Job, from his experience, says that's not what's going on. He's very certain that's not what's going on. That's part of the problem, is that they think they've found wisdom, but they really haven't. And how do we know the difference? Well, because we see it from God's eyes, right? And which is where that last part comes from. It's coming from God. And so this then kind of to me gives a couple of, I'm just kind of shooting from the hip here, a couple of potential things to keep in mind. Number one, as Father Zach said, wisdom is slow to speak. We are not in a time in our country, in our society, when people are slow to speak. I mean, right or left, it don't matter. If you don't speak, they're like, oh, you're just a coward. Well, maybe not. Maybe you're actually trying to exercise some wisdom here. But the other thing though, is where does our certainty come from? It has to come from God. Because when it comes to all the other stuff, we don't have the certainty we think we do. So even, Job's relying on his subjective experience. They're relying on accepted orthodoxy for their culture. And neither one of those are really reliable. Because even though Job is right that he's not being punished for any sin, he's been misstating about God. He's drawing wrong conclusions too, right? And so the only way we can have true certainty is from what God has revealed. Everything else, if we're going to be wise, we need to hold it a little bit looser than we would, I think.
If these are Job's friends, he doesn't need to be in it.
Yeah, they're not very good friends, are they?
Well, but I guess the younger one would not be friends.
Yeah, and we'll see about him next week. All right, let's move on to the next couple bits. Let's go to 29. And 20. So let's turn over to chapter 29. We're gonna look at the beginning, the first 17 or so verses, not the whole thing. So 29. But Job further continued his discourse and said, "Oh that I were as in months past, as in the days when God watched over me, when his lamp shone upon my head, and when by his light I walked through darkness, just as I was in the days of my prime, when the friendly counsel of God was over my tent, when the Almighty was yet with me, when my children were round about me, when my steps were bathed with cream and the rocks poured out rivers for me." So what's the big thing he's asking for here? He wants to be right with God. And so even though he's pretty sure he hasn't sinned, he knows there's something not right between him and God. Let's keep moving on. "When I went out to the gate by the city, when I took my seat in the open square, the young men saw me and hid, and the aged arose and stood. The princes refrained from talking and put their hand on their mouth. The voices of nobles were hushed, and their tongues stuck to the roof of their mouth. When the ear heard, then it blessed me, and when the eye saw, then it approved me, because I delivered the poor who cried out, the fatherless and the one who had no helper. The blessing of a perishing man came upon me, and I caused the widow's heart to sing for joy. I put on righteousness, and it clothed me. My justice was like a robe and a turban. I was eyes to the blind, I was feet to the lame, I was a father to the poor. I searched out the case that I did not know. I broke the fangs of the wicked and plucked the victim from his teeth." So Job is caring about his reputation here. But why did he have a good reputation? He misses his old reputation when everybody treated him with honor. But why was it he's saying that he was honored?
Maybe because there was all this evidence, or at least what the culture apparently saw as evidence of him being in good standing.
Yeah, he was doing the right thing, right? His reputation, at least the way he's telling it anyway, his reputation's not because he was wealthy. His reputation's because he's doing the right thing. He's caring about the poor, the widows, working for justice, breaking the fangs of the wicked, plucking the victim from the wicked's teeth, things like that. So let's throw a couple of questions out then. First of all, looking at the beginning, those first few verses, what's the most important loss that Job is, in Job's mind, what's the most important loss that he's had?
Relationship with God.
His relationship with God, that's right. All the stuff, his health, his kids, that's important. But what really matters at the end of the day is that he's lost friendship with God. Or he feels that God has forsaken him. This sounds very much like Jesus quoting Psalm 22 on the cross, right? And we know in both cases that's not really the way it was, but you understand how in the flesh that works. When we're really suffering, it can feel that God's not there. On the other hand, sometimes those are the times when we see God most clearly, right? Now, in those other verses, though, verses 11 through 17, what's the implication that Job's suffering is going to have on other people? How is the greater community going to be affected because Job has been cast down? At least the way Job's thinking.
They're going to be maybe discouraged from doing the right thing.
So maybe people won't follow his example and doing the right thing because, look how Job was treated. No good deed goes unpunished. Maybe that's part of it. What about all those people that Job was taking care of? Who's going to take care of them now? So again, the point I think here is that Job's, it's not just about his suffering, but Job is thinking bigger picture. And that's important because that shows that Job is not like his friends. Like there is still some wisdom in Job. Job's not hitting 100% here. He's not batting 1,000, but he's doing a lot. He's doing a lot better than it might have seemed earlier. So okay, let's skip over to chapter 31. We got about 10 minutes. We'll see how much we can do in chapter 31. All right. So first, 1 through 4, 31. He says, "I've made a covenant with my eyes. Why then should I look upon a young woman? For what is the allotment of God from above and the inheritance of the Almighty from on high? Is it not destruction for the wicked and disaster for workers of iniquity? Does he not see my ways and counts all my steps?" So first he's saying that, so he talked about already that he was doing the right thing. And now he's saying that part of why he's doing the right thing, why he was always doing the right thing, is that he's living life before God. He's remembering that God's the one who's looking over him. And that God is not just a distant, okay, let's see what happens, but God's actually actively involved. Verse 5. So he says, if I have walked with falsehood, or if my foot hastened to deceit, let me be weighed on honest scales, that God may know my integrity. If my step is turned from the way, or my heart walked after my eyes, or any spot adheres to my hands, then let me sow and another eat. Yes, let my harvest be rooted out. He says, I've been walking and living in truth. And if that's not the case, let God judge me and prove it. I'm willing to take the consequences. Verse 9. Or if my heart has been enticed by a woman, or if I have lurked at my neighbor's door, then let my wife grind for another. That's speaking of slavery, not anything else. Let others bow down over her, for that would be wickedness. Yes, it would be iniquity deserving of judgment, for that would be a fire that consumes to destruction and would root out all my increase. So he's saying, I've lived my life in purity, and if this is not the case, I'm willing to accept God's judgment. Verse 13, if I've despised the cause of my male or female servant when they complained against me, what then shall I do when God rises up? When he punishes, how shall I answer him? Did not he who made me in the womb make them? Did not the same one fashion us from the womb? So he's saying, not only have I lived in truth and purity, but I lived in justice. The servants, those who are kind of lower on the class set, I've treated them fairly. And if they have anything that they could bring against me saying that I've been an unjust boss, again, I'll take the response. Why? Because God made them, God made me. I might be higher socially, but we're all the same before God. And he's seeing that. Or if I have kept the poor from their desire, verse 16, or caused the eyes of the widow to fail, or eaten my morsel by myself, so that the fatherless could not eat it, but from my mouth I reared him as a father, and from my mother's womb I guided the widow. If I have seen anyone perish for lack of clothing, or any poor man without covering, if his heart has not blessed me, and if he was not warmed with the fleece of my sheep, if I have, oh, we'll stop there. Is that right? Yes. Yeah. Okay. Well, sorry. My outline breakup in my text, the way my text broke up, is a little bit different. I've lived in generosity. Nobody can say that I've turned a blind eye when they've been in need. Moving on. If I raised my hand against the fatherless when I had help, or when I saw I had help in the gate, then let my arm fall off of my shoulder. Let my arm be torn from my socket, for the destruction from God is a terror to me, and because of his magnificence I cannot endure. If I've made gold my hope, or said to find gold, you're my confidence, if I've rejoiced because my wealth was great, and because my hand gained much, if I have observed the sun when it shined, or the moon moving in brightness, so that my heart had been secretly enticed. He's talking about idolatry now, right? And my mouth had kissed my hand. This would have been an iniquity deserving judgment, for I would have denied God who is above. So I've been generous, truthful, pure, faithful. He's going to go on. We're not going to finish this off. In full transparency, and I'm willing to take the judgment if this is not the case. And to the point where the next section, verse 35, oh, that I had one to hear me, here is my mark. Oh, that the Almighty would answer me, that my prosecutor had written a book. Surely I would carry it on my shoulder and bind it on me like a crown. I would declare to him the number of my steps. Like a prince I would approach him. If my land cries out against me and furrows weep together, if I've eaten its fruit without money or caused its owners to lose their lives, then let thistles grow instead of wheat and weeds instead of barley. So he's appealing to God. I want God to be my judge, not you clowns. And if I'm lying about any of this, may a curse come upon me. I'm willing to take the judgment. So in the last 5 minutes, two things. First of all, as you have on your sheet in verse 6, he says, let me be weighed on honest scales, that God may know my integrity. So what's his deepest desire in this appeal? What's he really want as he's making this appeal? And remember all that we've talked about before.
It's to please God.
He wants to please God. He's appealing to God for judgment because he wants to be right with the judge. And so, how does this drive those claims of innocence, even if those claims kind of imply that maybe God's not being fair to him?
He doesn't mind God examining.
He doesn't mind God's what?
Examining.
Okay, yeah. He doesn't mind God examining. He calls for it. Yeah. And he's willing, even if he comes up judged before God, he's willing to do it. He wants to face God. There's some serious integrity there, right? I mean, I don't know if y'all, this was popular among some of the younger millennials, and for a while, where they would get a tattoo that said, well, only God can judge me. I'm like, dude, I don't know if that's a good thing. You might be saying that, but do you really want to stand before that righteous judge? Job's saying, yes, I do. And it's not because Job's being self-righteous, right? Because I think that tattoo is often just kind of a self-righteous, you can't judge me, only God can judge me. That's not what he's saying here. Job is saying, I want to face God. And I think there is an implication, even though he's saying, this looks really unfair, I think part of this is he's saying, I know God's not unfair. I know God is just. I know God is on my side. And so I want to face him and say, okay, what's up with all this? And you guys over here, everything you're saying is just nonsense. You don't have the wisdom you think you have.
He's saying this publicly.
And he's saying it publicly, yeah. What's the significance, Randy, do you think, of him being willing to say all this publicly?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is he's not afraid of man.
Yeah, this is not man pleasing here. Yeah. Yeah, this is just like everything he said in chapter 31, this is open before God and everyone.
Keep your conscience free of offense toward God and toward man.
Yeah, Job, as far as Job's concerned, his conscience is clear. His conscience is free. Now we'll see next week what Elihu has to say, and then the week after that what God has to say. But I think the really important thing here is that ultimately for Job, it is all about that relationship with God. Oftentimes, I think for us, when we are throwing a bit of a temper tantrum, it's kind of the other way, right? You know, when we're angry because we don't feel like we've been treated fairly, we're not doing this in the kind of integrity that Job has. Oftentimes, at least that's my experience anyway. So that is a call to to be transparent before God, even if there's some complaining there. You know, we'll see what God has to say about that. But I mean, the Psalms are the same way. The Psalms are that's what we're going to be hitting next. They're completely transparent before God, and that's how Job is too. So, all right, well, we'll go ahead and end here today. Next week we're going to look at Elihu's speech. I think what we're going to do with Elihu is similar to this week. We're going to hit the high points of the whole several chapters there. So that's what 32 through through 36. So y'all might want to look at those 4 chapters before next week, and we'll see what Elihu has to say. All right, God bless y'all, and I'll see you either in service or next week.